Welcome to The Tax Factor, the UK's top tax podcast from Blick Rothenberg, the tax, accounting and business advisory firm. This week with Annie Hughes and Sarah Stenton.
Welcome to The Tax Factor, the UK's top tax podcast. I'm Annie Hughes.
And I'm Sarah Stenton.
Sarah, welcome back. We must be doing something right to be invited back after our first episodes.
Yes, I was here earlier in the year celebrating 20 years of HMRC. It's probably a good time to congratulate our very own Heather Self, who has been appointed non-executive director of HMRC. Regular listeners will know she is a woman with many years of experience and strong views and is sure to be an absolute asset to them.
Oh, absolutely. What a coup for HMRC there. Before we get into our topics this week, Sarah, do you want to talk us through the tax headlines?
The Tax Factor. Headlines.
Big news from the ONS this week, a rare reprieve for Rachel Reeves. UK government borrowing's been revised down by $2 billion for April to August after a hiccup at HMRC in reporting inaccurate data on VAT receipts. So whilst the deficit is slightly smaller than first reported, it's still way above the forecast, keeping pressure on the Treasury. I'm not sure how much wiggle room on the budget that gives the Chancellor, and it's also a little bit embarrassing for HMRC. Over at the Conservative Party conference, which has been taking place in Manchester this week, aside from the incorrectly spelt chocolate bar labels, Kemi Badenoch announced a plan to scrap stamp duty on primary homes if the Tories win the next election. It's actually a move aimed at boosting home ownership and giving buyers some breathing space, but it could cost around $9 billion a year, funded by proposed spending cuts. And I'm always dubious of funded through spending cuts, as it's on a path to reducing tax evasion. I have a trivia quiz for you, Annie. In what year was stamp duty first introduced?
Oof, well, that's going to be before I was doing tax, Sarah. No idea. You'll have to enlighten me.
It was actually 1694, and it was to pay for the war against France. And it was actually only intended to last for 4 years. And here we are, 331 years later.
Like all taxes, they just grow and grow and grow.
Exactly. And finally, HMRC has been cracking down on football again, reclaiming $90 million in unpaid taxes from clubs, players and agents. The focus has been on dodgy R&D claims, tricky image rights and misclassified fees, showing that even the beautiful game isn't above the taxman.
So a busy week in the news, and unfortunately we're 7 weeks into this series of The Tax Factor and we still don't have a chocolate VAT story. I'll have to get over that. I'm sure it'll come eventually. I guess chocolate in the news from the Conservative Party conference in another way, at least. Great. So let's jump into what we're going to talk about this week. And we're going to start off with the news of a billionaire Revolut founder abandoning Britain for the UAE. Did you hear about this, Sarah?
I did, yes. So the co-founder and CEO of Revolut, a gentleman named Nik Storonsky, has officially, according to filings at Companies House, changed his country of residence from the UK to the UAE, which has been picked up by the press.
Yeah, I do see a lot of clients moving out of the UK, and the UAE seems to be a popular destination for wealthy families and individuals. I'm sure their tax rates have something to do with that. We should say, though, I suppose, that Revolut itself are looking supposedly at an increased global expansion, and the UAE is a key part of that. Some of Revolut's key investors are also based in the UAE, so it could be nothing more than practicalities and good business decisions. However, there has been a growing trend of wealthy individuals moving their tax residency overseas, especially after the abolition of the non-dom regime.
Yeah, I think it's more symbolic, isn't it, of the broader trend of wealthy individuals and wealthy families moving their tax residency in view of the non-dom changes. And I think either way, optically, it's a fairly damning news story. He's one of the 200 richest people on the planet, according to Bloomberg Billionaire Index in any case, and it's pretty reflective of the current mood of state of affairs in the UK, isn't it?
Yeah, so true. I wonder what it will do in terms of speculation for Revolut and if the company is likely to float. I mean, we know that if you did have a large shareholding in a company and you were to leave the UK, you wouldn't be caught under our capital gains taxes as long as you stay out of the UK for 5 complete tax years. Revolut, as far as I know, has a very high valuation at £55 billion. So be interesting to see what that does to market markets and the rumour mill.
Exactly. And there's already speculation about what the company will do in terms of floating on the stock exchange. So I guess we will wait and see. The next news item that we're covering today is actually to do with private pensions. HMRC have just published a warning to customers to think before you dip into your private pension pot, as it could be tax avoidance and cost you a lot more than you think. Now, this feeds into kind of wider narrative around expected budgetary changes coming up in November by Rachel Reeves. We've seen examples where clients are taking out their maximum tax-free lump sums because they're worried about the possible changes to the pension lump sum limits. One extreme example we've seen is an individual who took out his entire pension and gave it away. So HMRC, have just released a warning to pensioners to carry out essential checks before withdrawing money from their retirement savings. And HMRC are even going as far to say that dipping into your pension pot could be tax avoidance. And HMRC are also referring to unscrupulous firms, in HMRC words, who are targeting vulnerable people, warning that very often these firms say there's a legal loophole they can use so you don't pay any tax, and there is no legal loophole. And this is really part of HMRC's wider efforts to come down hard on firms promoting dodgy tax avoidance schemes.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, Sarah? I know we're taking a break from budget speculation today, so I won't focus on that too much, but pensions are coming up as an item of planning ahead of November, left, right and centre. And of course, you do have some quite good tax breaks on taking out a 25% lump sum distribution of your pension if it's within the limits, etc., etc. So I wonder who these firms are targeting and what it is that HMRC are seeing that they don't like. Of course, if someone's promising you're going to get lots of money that you'd expect to be tax-free, I would absolutely take a step back and think about what their agenda is, because it's very rare that something like that works in the long term.
And the age-old saying, if it's too good to be true, it's generally untrue.
Exactly. So swiftly from that over to the States, we had news earlier this week of Donald Trump imposing more tariffs. This time he's looking at trucks, I think mid and large size trucks. He's looking at a 25% tariff being imposed. He wanted to get it imposed this month. It is, I believe, coming in next month, he thinks. This is obviously part of his continued drive to bring production of the car industry back to America. No details yet over what will be included in those tariffs, whether it's parts, whether it's whole trucks. As often with a Trump announcement, very little on the detail for us to go into. But I think the interesting thing alongside that is the legality of these tariffs is currently being debated in the Supreme Court. They're expecting a decision in November. So of course, I think it was the Court of Appeals who ruled that tariffs, or the way the tariffs had been imposed, were illegal. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. I think the other interesting thing happening in the States at the moment is the IRS being affected by the government shutdown. So I think it was Wednesday this week, the IRS announced it was furloughing 34,000 workers, which is almost half of their entire workforce. There's two interesting things. I think one is, the amount of slowdown of work and the backlog that's going to create in the IRS. I've certainly been in tax before where there's been a huge backlog at the IRS, so I'm still not convinced they're caught up from all their posts from COVID. So that's going to create issues. And the announcement that it's unsure if there will be back pay for furloughed employees, although I think it was back in 2019 that Trump introduced a law that said in any government shutdown, employees should be made whole as soon as they're able. So there's no confirmation yet from the IRS or from the government that will happen in this case.
Another day, another controversial Trump news item.
Exactly that.
Blick Rothenberg, celebrating 80 years.
Well, I think that's all we wanted to cover this week, and it's probably all we've got time for. So, Sarah, thanks for joining me.
Yes, and if you want to stay ahead of the latest news and insights, don't forget you can head over to the Blick Rothenberg website.
Absolutely right. There's a ton of useful content there. You can also sign up for updates on key topics like the upcoming budget or future tax changes that could affect your business or personal affairs.
And it's a really simple way to make sure you never miss the big stories straight from the experts who follow these stories every day.
Yes, just visit us at blickrothenberg.com/insights and you can choose the topics that matter most to you. It's all free, it keeps you informed. So whether you're an entrepreneur, investor, or just someone who likes to know about what's happening with your taxes, it's well worth signing up.
And if you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and give us a rating or review. But from us, it's goodbye and have a great weekend.
Goodbye.
That's The Tax Factor. Thanks for joining us on The Tax Factor, the UK's top tax podcast. We'll be back next Friday with more tax news, updates and analysis. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Or visit blickrothenberg.com to catch up and stay on top of the latest developments. The Tax Factor from Blick Rothenberg. Copyright 2025.